The galactic arena shimmered under a canopy of stars, its walls carved from black obsidian that gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. A million alien spectators filled the stands, their disparate forms blending into a chaotic tapestry of movement and sound. Towering insectoid beings with iridescent shells clicked their mandibles in anticipation. Translucent creatures, their veins glowing faintly, pulsed with excitement. The air was electric, charged with the promise of violence and spectacle. At the center of the arena, General Zorth stood like a monument of destruction, his obsidian armor glowing faintly with veins of crimson energy. His massive blade, as long as a man was tall, rested against his shoulder, its plasma edge humming with lethal intent. His 4 crimson eyes scanned the arena, soaking in the crowd's adoration, before settling on the lone figure entering from the opposite side. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Captain Eva Ramirez was diminutive in comparison, her combat suit sleek and unadorned, a stark counterpoint to Zorth's ostentatious regalia. Her dark eyes were steady, her expression calm. In one hand, she held a small, unfamiliar device, its purpose inscrutable to all but her. The crowd erupted into laughter, a cacophony of mocking cheers and guttural jeers. Eva ignored it, her focus entirely on Zorth. Every step she took was deliberate, measured, as if the weight of her species rested on her shoulders. And it did. "You dare to face me?" Zorth's voice boomed, amplified by the arena's sound projectors. His mandibles spread in a mocking grin, the glow from his blade casting sharp shadows across his monstrous face. "This is the champion humanity offers? A fragile creature with no weapon and no hope." Eva's voice was quiet, yet it carried. "This isn't about you, Zorth. It's about what you represent and what I do." The gong sounded, a deep, resonant tone that reverberated through the arena, signaling the start of the duel. Zorth didn't hesitate. He moved with terrifying speed for a being of his size, his blade slicing through the air in a blur of molten energy. But Eva was faster. She sidestepped the first strike, the blade carving a molten groove into the obsidian floor where she had stood a heartbeat before. Her movements were precise, almost surgical, as she danced out of his reach, her smaller frame allowing her to maneuver with an agility that Zorth's bulk could never match. The crowd roared in delight at Zorth's relentless aggression, but their cheers began to waver as the minutes passed and he failed to land a single blow. Eva didn't attack. She didn't even try. Instead, she evaded, always staying just outside the reach of his blade. Her movements were almost hypnotic, her calm composure a stark contrast to Zorth's growing frustration. "What are you doing?" Zorth snarled, his voice echoing across the arena. He swung his blade in a wide arc, forcing Eva to leap back. "Fight me." Eva didn't reply. Her breathing was steady, her eyes locked onto his. She wasn't just dodging, she was studying him. Every swing of his blade, every shift in his weight, every flicker of hesitation was being cataloged and analyzed. Zorth roared, his anger boiling over. He charged, his blade raised high for a devastating overhead strike. But this time, Eva moved differently. Instead of retreating, she stepped in, close enough that the swing of his massive weapon passed harmlessly behind her. In a single, fluid motion, she activated her device, sending a pulse of energy directly into Zorth's chest plate. The crowd gasped as the pulse destabilized the power core of his armor. Crimson veins of energy flickered and dimmed, and Zorth stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. But he recovered quickly, his rage propelling him forward. "You think your toys will save you," he growled, tossing aside his sputtering blade and flexing his claws. "I don't need weapons to crush you." Eva's lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile. "Neither do I." The next phase of the duel was brutal, a test of endurance and adaptability. Zorth charged like a bull, his claws slashing through the air with deadly precision. Eva countered with agility and strategy, using the terrain to her advantage. She led him toward one of the arena's molten lava channels, her movements deliberate and precise. At one point, Zorth lunged, his massive form nearly pinning her against the jagged arena wall. But Eva dropped to the ground at the last second, rolling beneath him and springing to her feet on the other side. She activated her device again, this time directing a controlled explosion beneath Zorth's feet. The blast destabilized the ground, forcing him to stumble into the edge of the lava channel. The crowd's jeers turned to uneasy murmurs as the tide of the battle began to shift. Zorth's arrogance was giving way to desperation, his attacks growing wilder and less coordinated. Meanwhile, Eva remained unyielding, her calm precision an unnerving contrast to his frenzied aggression. "You fight like a coward," Zorth bellowed, his voice tinged with panic as he narrowly avoided another of Eva's calculated traps. Eva finally spoke, her voice steady and unwavering. "I fight to win. There's a difference." The final moments of the duel were a masterclass in tactical brilliance. Eva used her device to manipulate the environment, redirecting streams of molten lava to cut off Zorth's movements and trap him in an ever-shrinking space. With each step, she tightened the noose, her strategy suffocating him as surely as a physical blow. In a last, desperate attempt, Zorth lunged at her, his claws outstretched. But Eva was ready. She sidestepped once more, and with a final activation of her device, she unleashed a pulse of energy that collapsed the ground beneath him. Zorth fell to his knees, his massive form sinking into the molten edge of the arena floor. The crowd fell silent, their disbelief palpable. For a moment, the only sound was Zorth's labored breathing as he struggled to rise, his armor scorched and his pride shattered. Eva stepped back, her stance steady, her breathing controlled. She didn't gloat, didn't revel in her victory. Instead, she looked at Zorth with something resembling pity. "This wasn't about proving who's stronger," she said, her voice carrying across the arena. "It was about showing that strength isn't just about brute force. It's about resilience, adaptability, and the will to overcome." The silence in the arena deepened, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. And then, slowly, the crowd began to respond, not with jeers, but with a low, rumbling applause. It grew, rising like a wave, until the entire arena was echoing with the sound of respect earned, not demanded. Eva turned and walked away, leaving Zorth kneeling in the molten dust, his defeat a lesson that would ripple across the galaxy for generations to come. The air in the Galactic Council's Grand Hall was taut with anticipation, a collective hush settling over the thousands of alien dignitaries seated in the massive chamber. General Zorth of the Kroth Empire stood at the center of the arena, his towering figure clad in obsidian armor that glinted under the artificial starlight above. His crimson eyes gleamed with disdain, his mandibles twitching in what passed for a smirk among his kind. "Humans," he began, his voice resonating like a thunderclap, amplified for all to hear. "A species of scavengers, weaklings, and cowards. You hide behind alliances, beg for protection, and call it diplomacy. You are unfit to stand among the great powers of this galaxy." His words reverberated through the hall, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Kroth were known for their arrogance, their militaristic culture valuing strength above all else. But today, their general's words carried a dangerous weight, for they were more than an insult. They were a challenge. "I offer you this," Zorth continued, raising his clawed hand high. "Send forth your greatest warrior. Let them face me in single combat. Prove your worth, or accept your place as the galaxy's weakest link. Should you refuse," his mandibles spread wider, the smirk transforming into something more menacing, "we will take what we want by force. Your planet, your people, your resources, all will fall to the Kroth." The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Humanity's representatives sat in stunned silence, their faces betraying a mixture of anger, fear, and uncertainty. Far across the galaxy, deep within a secure underground chamber on Earth, the leaders of humanity convened. The room was stark, its only light emanating from the holographic projection of General Zorth replaying his challenge. The faces gathered around the table were grim. "This isn't just about pride," said President Malik, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. If we back down, it will invite more attacks. We'll be seen as an easy target. And if we accept, asked Defense Minister Lin, we send someone to their death for the sake of appearances? Admiral Song, a veteran with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, leaned forward. This isn't just about appearances. It's about survival. The Kroth are testing us. If we show weakness now, they'll come for us anyway. The question isn't whether we fight, it's how. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. For a moment, no one spoke until a quiet voice broke through the tension. I'll go. All eyes turned to the corner of the room, where Captain Eva Ramirez stood. She was unassuming at first glance, with a lean build and sharp features that betrayed nothing of the ferocity beneath. But those who knew her reputation knew better. Eva wasn't the kind of soldier who made grand speeches or sought attention. She was the one they called when no one else could get the job done. You understand what this means? President Malik asked, his tone grave. Eva nodded. I do. The Kroth homeworld was a sight to behold. A planet of jagged peaks and rivers of molten lava, its atmosphere thick with ash. The arena where the duel would take place was carved into the largest volcano, its walls blackened from centuries of combat. It was a fitting battleground for a species that thrived on violence. The stands were packed with spectators, their alien forms creating a kaleidoscope of movement and sound. The crowd roared as General Zorith entered the arena, his massive form looming even larger under the fiery glow of the planet's twin suns. His weapon of choice, a serrated blade crackling with plasma energy, was as intimidating as the warrior who wielded it. On the opposite side, Eva stepped into the arena. Her combat suit was sleek and functional, a stark contrast to the ornate armor of her opponent. In her hands was a small device, unassuming and easily dismissed by anyone unfamiliar with its capabilities. She didn't carry a traditional weapon, and her appearance only seemed to fuel the crowd's derision. Zorith laughed, the sound echoing through the arena. This is your champion? He sneered, his mandibles clicking in amusement. A fragile little thing armed with a toy. I almost feel sorry for you. Eva said nothing. She simply stood there, her expression calm and unreadable. Her silence was unnerving, even to the Kroth general. The gong that signaled the start of the duel reverberated through the arena, and Zorith wasted no time. He charged, his blade cutting through the air with a hiss of plasma. But Eva was faster. She sidestepped with precision, her movements fluid and calculated. The crowd roared as the duel began in earnest, Zorith's attacks relentless and brutal. He swung his blade with practiced ease, each strike intended to end the fight quickly. But Eva never engaged directly. She dodged, ducked, and weaved, her smaller size and agility allowing her to stay just out of reach. To the untrained eye, it looked like she was merely prolonging the inevitable. But to those paying attention, it was clear she was studying him. Every swing, every movement, every moment of hesitation, she was cataloging it all. Zorith's frustration began to show. He roared as he swung his blade in a wide arc, only for Eva to drop into a roll and come up behind him. For the first time, the crowd began to quiet, a ripple of uncertainty spreading through the stands. Then, Eva made her move. Activating her device, she directed a pulse of energy at Zorith's blade, overloading its plasma core. The weapon sputtered and died, leaving him holding little more than a jagged piece of metal. The general snarled, his claws flexing as he prepared to attack with brute force. But Eva was already moving, using the terrain to her advantage. She led him into a trap of her own design, exploiting the arena's unstable environment to weaken his footing. In a final, decisive move, she brought him to his knees, her device emitting a controlled burst that incapacitated him without causing lasting harm. The crowd was silent, their disbelief palpable. Eva stepped back, breathing heavily but otherwise composed. She looked down at the defeated general, her voice calm but firm as she spoke. This isn't about proving who's stronger, she said, her words carrying across the arena. It's about showing what humanity is capable of. We adapt, we endure, and when pushed, we rise to the challenge." The arena erupted into chaos, some cheering, others jeering, but none denying the outcome. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The Galactic Council's Grand Hall was alive with a cacophony of voices, a symphony of alien tongues blending into a low, resonant hum. Thousands of delegates from across the universe had gathered, their forms a striking display of diversity. Crystalline beings shimmering under the soft glow of starlight, reptilian warriors with scales like burnished metal, and shadowy figures that seemed to waver in and out of existence. At the center of it all, towering above even the most imposing of them, stood General Zorith of the Kroth Empire. The Kroth were a warrior race, bred for combat and conquest, their culture steeped in the traditions of dominance. Zorith was the embodiment of their ideals. Encased in obsidian armor that pulsed with a faint crimson glow, his 4 eyes burned with derision as he addressed the assembly. "Humans," he spat, the word dripping with disdain. "A species so feeble, so unremarkable, that they cling to the shadows of greater powers, scavenging scraps of technology they barely comprehend." He paused, letting the insult hang in the air before continuing. "You have no strength, no honor, and yet you dare to claim a seat among us." The murmurs in the hall grew louder, a ripple of unease spreading through the crowd. Zorith's words carried weight, not just because of his rank, but because many secretly shared his opinion. Humanity was a newcomer to the galactic stage, their rapid technological advancements making them a curiosity, but not yet earning them respect. Zorith's mandibles clicked sharply as he raised one massive claw. "Prove me wrong," he declared. "Send forth your greatest warrior to face me in single combat. Let us see if there is any mettle in your frail species. Or admit the truth and bow to the Kroth, as all lesser beings should." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the Council's floating platforms. The challenge was clear, the stakes enormous. Humanity could not refuse without confirming their weakness, but accepting would mean sending someone to certain death. Far from the grandeur of the Council, in a dimly lit briefing room buried deep beneath Earth's surface, humanity's leaders debated their response. The room was sparse, its only adornments a holographic display of Zorith's challenge and the grim faces of those gathered. "This is a calculated provocation," said Defense Minister Lin, her voice tight with frustration. "They want to humiliate us, to set the stage for invasion." "We can't ignore this," countered Admiral Song, his tone measured but firm. "Backing down would be a signal to every other hostile power in the galaxy. We'll be seen as weak, ripe for exploitation. And if we fight?" President Malik interjected, his gaze heavy. "Who do we send? No one in our forces can match the Kroth physically. It would be a slaughter." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. Then, a voice spoke from the shadows, calm and resolute. "I'll go." All eyes turned to Captain Eva Ramirez. She stood with her arms crossed, her lean frame exuding a quiet confidence. Eva wasn't the most physically imposing soldier, but she was a strategist, a specialist in asymmetric warfare. Her name was spoken in hushed tones among her peers, a legend built on impossible missions and unorthodox tactics. "You understand what you're volunteering for?" Malik asked, his voice soft but serious. "I do," Eva replied, "and I'm the best chance we've got." Admiral Song nodded slowly. "She's right. This isn't a battle of strength. It's a battle of wits, of will. If anyone can find a way to win, it's Ramirez." The decision was made. As the room emptied, Eva remained behind, staring at the holographic image of Zorith. Her mind was already working, analyzing his movements, his posture, the weaknesses hidden beneath his arrogance. The Kroth arena was a spectacle of brutality, carved into the heart of a volcanic mountain on their homeworld. Rivers of molten lava flowed through channels along the arena floor, casting an eerie red glow that danced across the jagged obsidian walls. The stands were packed with Kroth warriors and alien spectators, their cheers a deafening roar that echoed through the cavernous space. General Zorith entered first, his massive frame looming like a god of war. He carried a blade nearly as tall as Eva, its edge crackling with plasma energy. The crowd erupted in cheers as he raised the weapon, his mandibles clicking in a display of triumph. Then Eva stepped into the arena. Her figure was almost dwarfed by the imposing landscape, her matte black combat suit a stark contrast to Zorith's gleaming armor. She carried no visible weapon, only a small, nondescript device strapped to her wrist. The crowd jeered, their disdain for the human champion palpable. Zorith's laughter cut through the noise like a blade. "This is your warrior," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "A fragile little thing with no weapon? This will be over quickly." Eva said nothing. She simply stood there, her expression calm, her stance relaxed. The gong sounded, and Zorith lunged, his blade slicing through the air with a hiss. Eva moved with precision, sidestepping his attack and pivoting on her heel to avoid the follow-through. She didn't counterattack, didn't even raise her hands. Instead, she circled him, her movements measured and deliberate. The crowd grew restless as the duel unfolded. Zorith attacked relentlessly, each swing of his blade more furious than the last. But Eva was always one step ahead. She dodged, ducked, and rolled, her agility and awareness unmatched. "What are you doing?" Zorith roared, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. "Fight me." Eva finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "You're already losing." It was a calculated statement designed to provoke him, and it worked. Zorith's attacks grew wilder, his movements less precise. Eva continued to evade, forcing him to expend energy and exposing the flaws in his technique. Then she made her move. Activating the device on her wrist, she redirected a stream of molten lava from one of the arena's channels, creating a barrier between them. The sudden shift in terrain caught Zorith off guard, his massive frame struggling to navigate the unstable ground. Eva closed the distance, using the distraction to disable his blade with a precision strike to its plasma core. The weapon sputtered and died, leaving Zorith defenseless. The crowd fell silent as Eva stood over the fallen general, her victory undeniable. But she didn't deliver a killing blow. Instead, she stepped back, her voice carrying across the arena. "This wasn't about strength," she said. "It was about proving that humanity doesn't back down. We don't rely on brute force. We adapt, we endure, and we overcome." Zorith lowered his head, his defeat a heavy weight that even his pride couldn't deny. The silence in the arena was deafening, the implications of what had just happened rippling outward like a shockwave. Humanity had not only survived, they had earned their place among the stars.